What's up, y'all? TBrown31 here, back with JaboctheGreat. Once again, we have another episode of the Last Word podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the NBA playoffs, round 2, conference semifinals. We're going to talk about each of the 4 series, starting over in the West with the most recent game coming from last night, the Thunder and the Mavericks. That series is now tied 1-1. Mavs got a win last night. I watched about 3/4 of the game, then I had to tap out. It's pretty late over here on the East Coast. But Mavericks looked a whole lot better in this one than they did obviously in game 1, where they ended up losing that game 117-95. Wasn't really much they could do in that one, but this one, Luka definitely came out and had a really good game. That's just kind of how Luka is, I guess. He's going to give you those games where he doesn't really do too much. Like, he gives you some Snickers sometimes, and then he comes out in other games and he puts up doggone 30 points. He might put up 40, might put up 45. In this one, he had 29. PJ Washington had 29 actually as well in this one. Biggest story, I guess, coming for the Mavs. Kyrie, only 9 points, and I remember in the first half, he had like 4 or 5. Like, he didn't have really much in the first half at all. And then second half doesn't really come out much scoring either. And I know there's a lot big criticism with the Mavs right now. Is like Luka, he's handling the ball too much. Like, at some point, it's going to cost them a game. With him basically being the entire offense. Not that he is the entire offense, but trying to run the entire offense. When you have a guy like Kyrie there, I can't remember who it was. Somebody came out. I don't know if it was Gary Payton. It was somebody came out and said, the ball movement is much better when Luka's not there. And look, I get your points, and from an NBA player, I respect your opinion. But you take away Luka, I don't know. Like, what are you gonna have then? So, I mean, even with Kyrie, like, Kyrie can't carry that entire team. If you didn't have Luka, they wouldn't be in this position. So, I am interested to see. Now they're going to Dallas, OKC. They at least got one at home in that first game. Interested to see how this one turns out heading back to Texas.
Yeah, I think the series so far has been a story of Luka, right? I mean, Luka, 19 points is by no means like a stinker, but he shoots 6 for 19 in the first game. He's 1 for 8 on his threes. At that point, you gotta hang it up. Maybe give it a rest a little bit. And he just can't get anything going. Kyrie, 20 points, just a little bit ahead of him. Overall, I think the first game, he's not getting a lot out of those two stars, whereas the Thunder come out in game 1 and they're ready to go. You get 18 from Lou Dort, which is massive. 15 from Jay Will, 18 from Chet, 21 from Shea. These are minutes. Oopsies. 18 from Jalen Williams. Yeah, got a little mixed up. This game happened a little while ago. I've been traveling a lot. Anyway, you get 18 from Jay Will, which is still big. You get 19 out of Chet, 29 out of Shea, 11 from the other Jay Will, 16 from Aaron Wiggins is probably the big thing. And Lou Dort in his 18 or in his on his time on the court is plus 18, gets 7 points, some steals. Really made Luka Doncic's life really tough in that first game. Not so much in game 2. Luka's able to come out and get comfortable. He drops 29, as you said, big thing. PJ Washington drops 29 on 11 for 18 shooting. It's 7 threes at PJ Washington. Big man, 7 threes. That's a sturdy. You don't want that as a Thunder player. You don't want that to happen to you as a Thunder coach. You're looking to not have that happen again. Hardaway shows up, gives you 17. And so Kyrie, of course, you get 9. That's not what you want. He gave you 20 in game 1, didn't work. You get 9 and you win. In game 2, you kind of take that, but you're going to want a little more out of Kyrie. But the big thing is, as Kyrie doesn't step up, you had Tim Hardaway able to kind of fill in. You had PJ Washington fill in massively. Gafford not in as much foul trouble as he was in the Clippers series, still not doing well. And for the Thunder, it's kind of just Shea and Jay Will against the world. The rest of those guys don't pile in as many points. Aaron Wiggins gets 9, which is still nice. He's making good use of his moments from the bench, but not able to put in 16, upwards of close to 20. Chet only giving you 11, not giving you much else in the stat sheet either, other than 2 big blocks. So I think we haven't seen this is a 9-point win for the Mavericks. That's not a massive win, but I don't think we've really seen as much of a dogfight as we're expecting to see in this series. I mean, Shea and Luka have been consistent. Luka obviously higher up in the second game. But I'm interested to see as it goes back to Dallas if they kind of balance out a little bit and you get more well-rounded performances from each team. Because right now we're just kind of getting like whose role player shows up and who decides that they don't want to get off the plane that day. So maybe the Thunder go in and drop one, the first one in Dallas and pick it up. I actually do think that the Mavericks win this series, but I do think that they do it in 7. And I think stealing one on that first run through OKC is massive. So I think it's going to come down to, I don't think Kyrie's going to play that poorly every game. Obviously, he played better in game 1. I think that Luka, I don't think PJ Washington's going to be that good or that good every game, but I think that consistently PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, Luka, Kyrie, and I think and Tim Hardaway, if he can keep contributing, I think that is a recipe for a 7-game win in this series. I do think this is a really tough one, and I would be surprised if either of these teams came out in less than 7.
It might have been Tim Hardaway actually instead of Gary Payton. Tim Hardaway Sr., obviously, I might have said that. I don't remember. I just remember seeing the bald guy that was older. And I'm like, had to be one of those guys from the 90s. So, but Tim Hardaway Sr. might make more sense. I don't know, but that might be a hot take. But I wanted to circle back real quick, though. You said you take them in 7.
I do. I take the Mavericks in 7. I think they're going to get pushed in this series. I think this is a tough one. These teams are really resilient. I like I said, I don't think either of these teams come out of this in less than 7.
Hey, look, I appreciate it. That might be a hot take, considering how good the Thunder were. But, I will give it to you. Like, I don't really count out Kyrie and Luka. It's just, can they be as consistent? Obviously Kyrie has to score more. Like, they're not going to be able to win if he puts up less than 10 points, consistently. They're not going to win. But yeah. I don't anticipate that to happen. So, hey, I mean, if they play really well and you get your role players to play well, hey, maybe they do. But I don't know. I think I would still stick with the Thunder just to, be safe here.
I think that's completely fair. We're gonna move to another thing in the West, and so this one also might have been a hot take. We didn't have a video to talk about our semifinal picks. I would have taken the Timberwolves in 7. That looks like it'd be wrong in a completely opposite way that I would think it would be wrong, in that the Timberwolves have a 2-0 lead, and they won both of those games in Denver and kept the Nuggets from scoring 100 points both times. That is pretty much the story of this series so far. The Timberwolves defense has dialed it, and I'm sure you've seen posts about how the GM for the Timberwolves was formerly the GM for the Nuggets. He came over to the Wolves and has built, he's on his I must destroy what I've created storyline. Game 1 is crazy, and I think the issue here is, and I mean, people have talked about this all the time, but it's become a point to where it just wasn't that big of a problem for Jokic. He is an amazing player, but he's not the most athletic. He's not the most physical. He can have some stamina issues every now and then, and he can be a workhorse. The Timberwolves exploit that heavily by having Cat, Rudy Gobert, Naj Reid, and Kyle Anderson on a constant rotation on him. And then for Jamal Murray, you get Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, not really Mike Conley, but Nickeil Alexander-Walker. This is just like terrorism. I'm sure you've seen the clip in Game 2. I watched the series. I've been really interested. I'm a big defense fan. It's really fun to see. But the clip in Game 2 where McDaniels and Alexander Walker have Jamal Murray. There's no really other way to say this. Just straight up like in hell. Like he can't go anywhere. And that's been the story of this year. I mean, you get 43 from Ant, and in Game 1 he goes nuclear. But you also get 20 from Cat, 14 from Conley, 16 from Naj Reid. You get 13 rebounds from Gobert, and he doesn't do much offensively in that one, but he's there defensively. And the Nuggets really couldn't get a whole lot going. Jokic is 32, Michael Porter gets 20. Other than that, not a whole lot going on. Aaron Gordon only 9, KCP only able to get 6. His defensive presence not that great. And Jamal Murray, Mr. I Hate the Lakers, gets 17, but he's negative 22 in the game. And I don't try to use plus minus too much, but he's just been not good in this series. And we'll move to Game 2 and really talk about that. So Game 2, Rudy Gobert's child is born. They have no Rudy Gobert anchoring their defense. No matter. He's changed that culture very, very well. And if you look at the stat sheet, the first thing you'll see is Jaden McDaniels with 5 points and say, like, why did that guy play 26 minutes? That is because he killed Jamal Murray. You could charge him with murder. He was out there destroying the guards, and then again, you get 27 out of Cat, 27 out of Ant. The defense here is suffocating. Naj Reid gives you 14. Nickeil Alexander-Walker gives you 14. And they just hold the Nuggets down. Gordon leads this one with 20. Jokic only able to put up 16. He shoots 5 for 13. Naj Reid had him in a prison cell for some points of this game. And Jamal Murray, Mr. I Hate the Lakers, 3 for 18, 8 points. He gets a block, 2 steals, 2 assists, 13 rebounds. He's out there. He's doing something. Reggie Jackson, 1 for 6, 3 points. Gets dropped to both knees as if he's proposing to Anthony Edwards. I like Reggie Jackson. I've been high on him before. Great guy, fun player. I don't know what's happened to the Nuggets in this series. I would have taken the Timberwolves in 7. I know that the Timberwolves, I feel like they're really built to counter the Nuggets. They got beat by them in 5 games last year. Obviously, they were having some issues getting the defensive culture together in that series last year. But then that one game, it was kind of that same story. Their defense tightened up a little bit. Anthony Edwards had a nuclear game. They win. Now it's not really nuclear for Anthony Edwards anymore. He's pretty consistently high on offense here in the playoffs. One game or two against the Suns, that was a dud. And this defensive culture, with or without Gobert, has been completely dialed in. I don't really know if this will be a sweep, but Minnesota going back home up 2-0 feels like we're getting a 4 or 5 victory here. I just don't think that the Nuggets are really built to handle the defense of the Timberwolves. And again, I would have expected this one to go the distance. It being over in 4 or 5 was not on my radar. This Nuggets team is really talented, but for some reason, Jamal Murray has lost his power. He took out Pookie Bear, LeBron James, and that's all he had in him. I guess he got fueled by Anthony Davis saying, I should be Defensive Player of the Year, hit a game winner on him, ruined the lives of Lakers and LeBron fans, and then went to Minnesota. Actually, no, has not been to Minnesota yet. Went back to Denver. Went back to Denver and has lost his mind. Also lost his mind in the fact that he threw stuff at a ref and was given a suspension, or not a suspension, given money, a fine, given money. Given us a fine and no suspension. This has been a weird series. I'm happy to see that the Timberwolves are dominating like this. Again, I'm a big fan of the defensive culture over there. And watching their basketball games has just been an incredible display of defense. There were some issues in the beginning of the Nuggets game that maybe they were a little too physical, and there were some calls not called. But there's 2 of them, and the Timberwolves in Game 2 won 106-80. And so I will not be swayed to believe those 2 calls changed the outcome of that game. The Denver Nuggets just couldn't hit their shots. They couldn't get shots off. They couldn't get good looks for shots. Talked a lot about the Timberwolves. I'll pass it back to you so we can move along here. But this has been a stifling series, and I think it's because the defense of the Timberwolves is a stifling defense, and I don't think that the Nuggets are really built to get past this. And if they do, it'll be super, super impressive to come back from down 2-0 against this team, especially given the circumstances. But I don't see that happening. And the Timberwolves are locked in on defense. I think tonight they'd probably go up 3-0, and we're getting the Timberwolves are moving forward in 4 or 5 here.
Yeah, not to be hyperbolic, because it is a 2 seed Denver, against Minnesota. But if Minnesota somehow blows this 2-0 lead and the Nuggets come back and win this series, it'd be one of the best comebacks we've ever seen. Obviously we've seen some 3-1s before. OKC, Golden State, obviously the Cavs and Golden State. We've seen those, but like you said, given the circumstances, like what we've seen in the second game, and even at some points in the first game, because the first game started out, Nuggets couldn't do anything. When it first started out, it was 10-0 or 9-0, excuse me, to start. Same thing, really. The Nuggets literally at the end of the first quarter, or I should say, with 3 minutes left in the first quarter, it was 18-9. And then they finally at the end took the lead 25-23. And that point, I kind of felt like, okay, the Nuggets they had some problems obviously early on. I felt like they were going to come back and kind of do what we expect them to do. Not to say you pick Minnesota, right? So this is a toss-up series. So not to say that Minnesota had no chance, but I expected the Nuggets to win 7. If that happens, I'll be very surprised. But I was thinking, once they kind of took a lead and got on a little bit of a run in the second quarter, going into the third quarter, they were still mostly ahead. Then at the end of the fourth, or excuse me, end of the third, going into the fourth, that's when kind of things kind of shifted. And then that last part of the game, it just seemed like out of nowhere, boom, they went up like 87, 84, with like 5 minutes left. And just kind of from there, Minnesota, they just slowly just kept getting shots, kept making plays. The next thing you know, it's 100 to like 90 with 2 minutes left. It was pretty much done. So game one, watching that was kind of shocking. Didn't watch game two because I actually wanted to sleep. Hearing about it, looking it up, looking the score up, next morning and seeing that, seeing Jamal Murray basically committing assault. I think what you said was probably the best way to put it is like Minnesota is just built to beat these guys. Like even without Rudy Gobert in game two, defense is great. The matchups, this has just not really been a good matchup for Denver so far. Um, Obviously, you got to have Jamal Murray. You don't have to have him do what he did against LA because that's he was just going crazy against LA. But what I would say is he has to absolutely be better than what he's been in this series so far. And even and this isn't like directed at Jokic, obviously, he just won MVP, but like even if you look at Jokic game one, like he had 30 something points, which you really wouldn't like you that was probably the quietest, like almost triple double like I think I've ever seen, when you really look at it, like 32, 8, and 9 from Jokic. It didn't matter. Anthony Edwards put up 40 something points, 43. Like he was great. In the game two, Aaron Gordon ends up actually leading and scoring with 20 points. And again, Michael Porter Jr. 9. That was a big thing, last year with Michael Porter Jr. not really showing up at it when he should. Later in those playoffs on that championship run. Game two, he didn't again. Jamal Murray, though, that's the biggest story there. Um, and you mentioned the fine. Like I was really surprised that he only got a fine.
Yeah.
Because the fact that they showed that he had thrown the towel and then threw the heat pack, and since it looked like it was at the ref, I kind of was surprised they didn't suspend him. But I think it would take a lot for you to suspend, the second best player on the defending champions in a playoff series like this. And the rules shouldn't be different, but I think it would have taken a lot for him to suspend them. Even when Draymond got suspended back in 2016 in the finals, for that one game. It took a lot, and it was a whole lot with Draymond. I don't think the league is really going to be willing to get Jamal Murray out for that. But he probably should have, like, if we're being completely honest here. Even if you don't think the refs are doing their job correctly, like, the refs didn't cause you to lose that game. The refs didn't cause you to score 8 points. Like, you've got to be better. Simple as that. Game three, I would probably lean towards the Nuggets winning just because, like, I can't imagine the Nuggets going down 0-3. But considering Minnesota's going home, they haven't shown any sign of slowing down. I would say if they lose tonight, if Nuggets lose tonight, it's over. Like I don't care. There's no way in heck they are coming back from down 0-3. If they do that, then that's gonna be the greatest comeback of all time. But probably not gonna happen. I wouldn't anticipate it happening. Now let's move to the Eastern Conference. We had kind of two interesting games back to back for Cleveland and Boston. This series, Cleveland was the only series, along with the Magic to go 7 games in the first round. They beat the Magic back on Sunday. Then their series started on Tuesday against Boston. They got demolished game one, 120-95. And we're sitting here, watching this game, and I'm like, is this really going to end up like the same series we just had with Boston and Miami? And funnily enough, game two, Cleveland comes out and they get the win. Boston can't shoot worth a lick. Like Donovan Mitchell had an amazing game. I mean, I literally I was not expecting this. I mean, and Cleveland overall played really well. Boston overall did not play really well. But I was just I was surprised. Like I was flummoxed watching the game because I looked down at one point, I looked back up, and Boston's got like a 10, 15 point lead. And then second half was really, it was mostly over at that point, for being honest here. So Boston now they're going to Cleveland. I think again, it's more likely that we'll see what kind of happened in the first series. They lose that second game, they drop it. After pretty much demolishing the team in the first game. I think it'll probably be likely that they'll come back game three, win, string a couple more wins together. Maybe Cleveland gets one of these next two. But I think it's a lot more likely that they win the next two at least. Um, maybe when Cleveland gets a game five and Boston wins game six. But I'm not going to overreact to this game. I think, Donovan Mitchell had an amazing performance, Cleveland overall. Boston just had a pretty bad game. Pretty pathetic, to be honest with you, but I'm not going to act like it's the end of the world there.
Yeah, I'm coming off the upset train on this one. I'm not taking the Cavs in 7. I'm not going to make some kind of crazy prediction as I did with the two Western Conference ones. But this is a crazy turn of events. It is interesting. I did not think about the fact that this has mirrored the Miami series almost perfectly so far. That is an interesting turn of events for sure. Game 1, I'm watching. I'm on a plane. They got live TV on the plane. The game starts, then they hit me with the little safety video. Buckle in your seatbelt, put your phone on airplane mode, don't do anything stupid, that kind of thing. That video ends. It comes back. What it was a tie game, they're down 10. I'm like, all right, okay. I'm watching. They're kind of in that 10-point hole the whole time. Get off the plane, get into the airport, get my bags and everything, get outside, open my phone. I see a message from Terrence that says, what happened to the Cavs? I look, down 20. So game 1 was interesting. They just could not get it going. The spacing on the floor for the Cavs without Jared Allen and without, surprisingly, Dean Wade is not good. But game 2, I'm like, yeah, I'm not following this series too much. They come out and surprise me. Donovan Mitchell, amazing. Nuclear game here. 29 points for him. Evan Mobley finally finds that offensive spark again. He gets 21. Karis LeVert, I saw a tweet this year that said that every night Karis LeVert plays basketball like he's possessed by a different former NBA player and he has no idea who it is each night. I think that is very true. So I don't know who possessed him in game 2, but they were good. He gets his 21 points, helps his team get over the edge to be sure they don't go down 2-0 headed back home. Jason Tatum has a really solid game. Jaylen Brown plays well, but those kind of extra shooters for not for Miami, for Boston, Derek White, Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, not able to get it going, and that's really the big issue here. Peyton Pritchard does put up 13, which is pretty good. I mean, he shoots 6 for 10, but he's 1 for 4 on his threes, and that's a big thing for him. Obviously, he converts those 3 threes. They don't win this game still, but this is an interesting one. I would say that the Cavs probably are going to lose in 6. I think they could get another one at home. They were good against the Magic in Cleveland. Obviously, the Celtics are not the Magic. We're going to be clear there.
Right.
I don't think you need 30 every night from Derek White to beat this Cavs team. I'll say that I was probably the most disrespectful to the Cavs when I made my picks for this one. I believe I worded it as the Celtics will win game 1 and the Cavs will forfeit. That didn't happen. Okay, all right, you got me. Cavs got game 2. But I think this one's over in 6. I think we're going to go into Cleveland. Celtics probably take the first one in Cleveland, and then might drop the second one, and I think they're going to close it up. Maybe in Cleveland. I go back and leave a little sting. Obviously, Jaylen Brown said that he was up. He's still feeling the loss from 2018 and Game 7, which is an interesting take, considering this team is almost completely different except for Tristan Thompson is back over there. So I hope that if they win this series, that Jaylen Brown doesn't give me some kind of crazy quote about how it feels good to beat the Cavs, because these ain't the same guys. But I think that the Boston Celtics have got this one wrapped up. As a Bucks fan, I'm sure you would be pretty not surprised to know that I don't feel positively about the Boston Celtics. But I'm not stupid. And I think that they're going to win this series. They're a better team. As weird as it might sound to say, I don't think you get that bad of a game from Sam Hauser and from Derek White and from Peyton Pritchard. As a Bucks fan, though, I will say that the Drew Holiday shooting stretch in the playoffs, that's what you got to deal with. He's there for defense in the playoffs. He will get you some really good defensive plays. He's going to chuck up shots and miss them. just kind of got to deal with it. It's not really the most negative thing, I wouldn't say. I don't think it's worth panicking over and complaining. I've definitely had my fair share of times where I was not happy with with Drew Holiday as a Buck. So Celtics fans, if you're upset about the Drew Holiday shooting stretches and the way that he chucks up shots and misses a lot, please know that that's just what it is. All right, we got a championship with it, so maybe you can too. As a Bucks fan, though, I hope not. Continuing my as a Bucks fan rant, the Pacers are down 2-0. Yippee! This is an interesting series. Game one, I think you can absolutely argue we've got some bad stuff going on with the refereeing, and I hate to go straight there, but without getting into the game, they play good basketball in the series. Josh Hart, 48 minutes in game one, no shocker there, and they go up 1-0 on a 121-117 victory where there's some rough calls at the end. And then game two, there's some more calls that are maybe questionable, but I don't think it's really as bad as game one. And they just kind of get outplayed by the Knicks. And I don't really think they need the refs to. I don't think the Knicks need the refs to beat this Pacers team. I think they're a really resilient team. Even with the refs, the Knicks run like a 6-man rotation and are cruising and being able to stay pretty active. Game two is insane to look at their box score and to watch the game and realize as the game goes on, like these guys are playing the whole basketball game. Like you're not seeing a wide rotation of players. You kind of watch the game and you're like, wait a minute, that's still Josh Hart, that's still Isaiah Hartenstein, that's still Jalen Brunson, and that's how they end up with Brunson drops 29, DiVincenzo, who plays 43 minutes, drops 28. OG Anunoby gets 28 in game two, Josh Hart 19, Hartenstein 14. Really physical, really resilient team that I think can last really long. I don't really think they sweep the Pacers. Pacers are about to go back to Indiana. They're going to get one there, I think, for sure. Before I pass it back to you, though, because I think this one really comes down to I don't think the Pacers are tough enough to beat the Knicks, and I don't think that that's like a big blow to the Pacers' like toughness on their team. The Knicks are just a super physical, super like well developed team for being out on the court for a whole game and being able to kind of take the physicality. Also, Rick Carlisle has had a weird aversion to letting TJ McConnell be their closer. I think that would work out better than Halliburton so far in the playoffs. Halliburton had a really good game too. Not so much a really good game one. I think that he should be a little more willing to let McConnell take it down the stretch, which feels weird to say. I feel like TJ McConnell for a while was like a solid role player there for steals. Now he's just I'd say a really good piece of that Pacers offense, especially this playoffs as Halliburton has sort of drifted away. So yeah, I mean, I think overall the Knicks are going to take this one probably in 6 due to that physicality. I do have to say though, Rick Carlisle, 78 missed calls, 80 of them. I don't think so. If you tell me that the refs missed 10 and you lost game one because the refs missed 10 calls between the past 2 games, I'd be like, yeah, probably. They admitted to that in the Sixers series, right? They're like, we missed them in game 2. Sixers would have had that game. 78 calls. Did you count 80 calls that you thought they missed? I don't think so. I think that's crazy. I think we got to give it a rest. Maybe. I don't really have many issues with Rick Carlisle, but maybe potentially coach a better basketball game. I don't think the refs are against you that bad. I do not think there's 80 missed calls against you. I'm not here for complaining about 80 calls. We have a ref problem in like all of the major leagues that I watch, and the NBA is obviously included there. But I do not think that there was 80 missed calls so far in the series, specifically against you. I just don't. I'm not feeling that. I'm not seeing that. I think that these games are winnable. I think maybe you get robbed in game 1 for sure. Game 2 is similar, but I don't think that there's as many big calls that they missed. I think you just get outplayed from buzzer to buzzer, and I think your team ain't tough enough to handle the Tom Thibodeau terrorism basketball. So yeah, you and your 80 missed calls should maybe focus on something else as you head back to Indiana. I do think you'll get 1 or 2 in Indiana. If you get 2, that'd be really interesting. I think they get 1, and I think the Sixers are not. Whoa! I think that the Knicks take this one in 6.
Yeah, you just pulled the Pacers punk card there. So, let's see how that turns out. If they end up winning another game here. But I when I first saw the grievance thing, like I saw that they were submitting the report or whatever saying you missed these calls. I didn't see the number at first. And after game 1, game 1 was kind of with the hand in there.
Yeah.
So fair enough. 80 is like you're just complaining. Like there's no way you actually sat down and you counted 80. Because if at that point you're implying that the refs are legitimately incompetent.
Yeah,
And
it's like completely
you
stupid.
yeah, like I understand because missed calls are just gonna happen. Like this is a sport. And you mentioned, ref problems in the major leagues. I think if you asked all the fans, the worst refs, I guess, so to speak, would probably be in Major League Baseball with the umpires. Uh, but
Yeah.
NBA refs are probably right up there too. But 80, like that's just sour grapes. And I know you didn't mention this, but I don't know if you saw it, but he also mentioned the small market thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's something, on ESPN, they talked about that. Of course, Stephen A's big mouth on First Take. Um, Look, I will say it's probably beneficial for the Knicks, for the NBA, for the Knicks to move on. If we're being honest here, I think it'd be beneficial for the series to go 7. We saw the toxicity with what the fans were saying to Reggie Miller in that game. Josh Hart let him know, and I love to see it. I want this series to go 7, but it is obvious for the NBA. They obviously want the LAs, the Bostons, the New Yorks. They want them to move on, but I don't think they're. And you can bring up the 2002 conference finals with the Kings and Lakers. You can bring that up, but I don't think they're out
Yeah.
here like intentionally rigging games. For certain teams to win or lose. Because if that was the case, they wouldn't have had the Lakers lose in 5 to the Nuggets in the first round. They would have at least let it go until the doggone conference finals, right? So, um, yeah, I get his point, but I think that's just bad sour grapes to bring it up in 80 calls. Like, not the refs are bad, but these teams whine too much. And I talked to you about this, and personally, like I think these guys just whine too much every single game, every single.
Yeah.
And I watched Luca last night, and every time I watch Luca, it's like I forget, and I'm like, dang, he really does cry a lot. As great as he is, him especially, he thinks he gets fouled every time, and it's a little nauseating to watch. I'm not gonna lie. Like they're gonna play harder. It's the playoffs. They're gonna let stuff go. Now they're gonna if they make bad calls like they did, maybe game 1, fair. But say there's 80 missed calls, like I'm not gonna say he's full of crap, but Rick Carlisle knows more basketball than both of us combined. But that doesn't mean that he's completely in the right here and to file that grievance and to say like, oh, they're screwing us because it's the Knicks. Like you think that the NBA really wanted y'all to beat the Bucks the way y'all did? Like, no, they shouldn't have. Like in my opinion, if Giannis had been healthy, if Dame had been able to play, we wouldn't be having a discussion about the Pacers right now. So relax. With that being said, like they just got out tough. They got outplayed. Jalen Brunson, I can't really say even too much about him. He's been outstanding out there. Josh Hart playing, to start this series, the first 2 games, played all 48 minutes of both games. Like I don't want to say he's been the quiet MVP, but he's been the heart of that team. You know, really for these playoffs so far. We go back to that game against Philly. I can't remember. I think it was game 2 where he started hitting those threes out of nowhere. Like he's been great in the playoffs so far, and especially in the series. And the amount of rebounds this dude gets, everybody's talking about that. It is crazy to think, like a guy of his, like I don't want to say stature, but I mean the amount of rebounds he gets for his size, crazy. And maybe it's a lot of it's just heart, passion, drive, toughness. Maybe that's what it is, and maybe that's why the Pacers are losing. I don't. The games are close enough to where maybe you can blame the refs if that's what you want to do because these aren't 20-point games or anything. But in my opinion, the Knicks are just clearly a better team. They have more heart, and you said it best. They're running a 6-man rotation. Like I don't think as great as Josh Hart has been playing both games in its entirety. Like I don't think they're expecting Josh Hart to say, all right, I'm gonna be out there the entire game. DiVincenzo playing 44 minutes. Jalen Brunson, he got hurt. So I mean, if he probably would have played more if he hadn't have. So like Isaiah Hartenstein playing 40. Like I think if you had I think everybody's kind of forgetting if you had Julius Randle, like this would be a different discussion. Like Mitchell Robinson, like think about how the series would be if those guys were playing. So I think the Pacers probably can get some games. Like they were close enough. Burton had a much better game too than game one. It's not even close in comparison. I think the Pacers can get an opportunity to win these next couple games, but I think like you, Knicks are probably going to win. I would say hopefully in 7, so I can continue to watch this toxic basketball.